Good afternoon. This is Carol Kennedy, Account Manager with ApplicantStack. We still have some folks dialing in, so we'll go ahead and give everyone just a couple of minutes, and then we will be right back. We are just a couple of minutes past, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining today. Again, this is Carol Kennedy. I'm an Account Manager with ApplicantStack, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Ellen Benzine. Our agenda for today, we'll be talking about providing and gathering critical application information in ApplicantStack. That includes providing location and salary information in your job description. We'll talk about how to shorten your employment application process, as that's a trend that we are seeing in the industry. And we'll be talking about how to actually make those modifications and your options in ApplicantStack to make those changes. We have included a quick link here to some content for you surrounding these topics. I believe those will be going in the chat as well so that you can access that. And then at the end of the presentation today, we'll be opening up the floor to questions, and we'll do our best to answer those questions for you. So hopping in, important job description information. It's very important to include salary information. That's very important to candidates as they are evaluating potential roles. In doing that and including that information, expectations will be clear and set from the beginning of the process. And according to Indeed, 75% of job seekers say they are more likely to apply to a job if the salary range is included in that information from the employer. And typically what they're seeing is there are 3.8 times more applications when the salary information is included. So we would certainly encourage you to do that, and we'll be sure to show you where to do that in the system in just a bit. It's also become apparent that accurate location information is critical. So for candidates evaluating potential roles, the length of commute is pretty important. So I know for myself, if there's a job in the next city over, it could be a 35-minute commute, it could be an hour and a half. It just kind of depends what side of town, what traffic looks like. So having that pinpoint location is pretty important. That's going to help you get seen by the right candidates. And again, according to Indeed, jobs with street address information receive 25% more apply starts on average than those that do not include that information. Also from Indeed, jobs with pay, street address, and Indeed apply turned on have 86% more apply starts on average than when that information is not included. The other sort of trend that we're seeing is moving towards a shortened employment application process. So I'm sure we've all been through these job applications where it's just question after question. There may be survey or responses that include you have to type a long response to questions. So we've seen more and more applicants are using mobile devices to apply to jobs. Their time is valuable, so long-winded or overly complex processes may turn applicants away. They may have usernames and passwords for dozens of sites, so if you require it on your site, you have to keep in mind that if they're applying to other roles, they have usernames and passwords for those sites as well, and that can get kind of overwhelming. It's possible that employers are asking for too much personal information, redundant questions. So we might recommend you go ahead and consider going through your application process yourself and really kind of evaluating it. Maybe go through, fill out some information. How many clicks does it take? How many fields are being required? And really just think through the eyes of an applicant, how long that might take, what you're looking for, would they want to go through that process or not? So one of the things that we're seeing is more of a lead generation approach. So maybe you have a short form asking for basic information, name, phone number, email, maybe a LinkedIn profile, perhaps sending a full-blown employment application later. According to LinkedIn, the conversion rate from job seeker to applicant increases by 365% when a job application takes 5 minutes or less to complete. In ApplicantStack, we want to ensure that we are collecting the necessary information. We have a standard employment application available for you, and our support team can assist with minor modifications. So if you want to add a question, take a question away, perhaps ask your candidate what their salary expectations or requirements are, we can certainly help you make those adjustments. As far as how to shorten that process, perhaps you want to create a short questionnaire to gather information. And as we mentioned, send that full-blown employment application later once we know we have interest in that candidate. We can also rely on our candidate and application fields to gather information and again, send that application later. So we're looking for address, zip code, and so forth. We can modify those fields to collect that information. The resume and the cover letter can be required or optional. And we also have an option for Indeed Apply. So that will allow candidates that have an Indeed profile to apply with that profile and save themselves some time. So we'll be sure to bring you into the system in just a minute and we'll cover that information. Before we hop ahead, we did want to mention our upcoming events. On September 24th, we have another Ask Me Anything session regarding reference checks. We would love to see you there. And we have an option to register here. And on September 12th, we will be having an onboard webinar. So we'll be covering our onboard system. And we would love to have you join that as well. So in addition to these QR codes here, we do have an option in the system. The announcements panel in the upper left of your homepage should have a registration link for those events as well. Okay, with that, I'll go ahead and bring everyone into my demo account and we'll talk through how to make those adjustments that we just mentioned. So as far as salary information, where to include that, we can send that to Indeed. And I'll go ahead and go to the little icon in the upper right. It could have your photo. It could have a head and shoulders icon. We'll come to Setup. We will come to Job Boards, and we will come to Edit Settings for Indeed. And at the bottom here, we have Indeed Salary. I did want to point out we have a link here to an Indeed article that will list the benefits of pay transparency and including that information. You will include what field, and you may need to create one in your system, where you want that to pull from in the ApplicantStack system. If you choose not to provide salary information, it's possible that Indeed may provide an estimate to candidates that may or may not be accurate. So we would prefer that we go ahead and be transparent. Some states are now requiring that as far as the employer to provide salary information. While we're on the screen, I did want to mention we talked about Indeed Apply. We've got some options here for you. You can not include it. You can include mobile only and always desktop and mobile. I believe we recommend mobile only, but it's really up to you how you would like to configure that. As far as location, for now, you can include that information in the job description. We should have some further features coming for you, and those will be announced as soon as that is ready. We just wanted to make you aware that that is coming. So we had mentioned perhaps reviewing your application process and going through it much like you were a candidate through the eyes of the candidate to really evaluate your process. So I did want to share how you can do that. So if I come to our home page, and if I click on Open Job Board, this will show you what your candidate is seeing. So we can perhaps click on our accounting manager job. Again, we're looking at this through the eyes of an applicant. We will see what they will see. So we have our job description. We can go into the application and apply. And feel free to come in and put some information in here. Maybe time yourself, how many clicks, really pay attention to your process. You can always come into ApplicantStack later and delete that profile or just disregard it. But we can see here we have our contact information. Anything with an asterisk will be required. We've got quite a few here. Maybe we want to look at taking some of those out. We have some application fields. I'll be sure to show you where to modify those. Resume and cover letter. Does our applicant pool typically have a resume? Do they not? So maybe consider making those optional instead, or disregarding that. Coming down, we have our standard application for employment. So maybe you want to make some modifications here. Again, our technical support team can help you with minor changes, or maybe you want to consider removing that and sending it later on. We've got some position-specific questions, so I'll show you how to create a shortened questionnaire in the system and how to include that information. Okay, so coming back into the system, another place you can access that when you are setting up your job, under questions, we have a preview button available. So you can always see that process there as well. All right, so let's go ahead, let's hop into, and I want to start in our job board settings. So similar to the Indeed job board, we'll come to Setup, we will come to Job Boards, and we will come to our public job board that's tied to your career site, and we will come into Edit Settings. So we mentioned the resume. Perhaps we want to make that optional, required. Maybe we want to altogether hide that. Same with the cover letter. Do we really need that information? Maybe we make that optional. It's up to you. We mentioned the applicant login. So again, candidates may have logins for 20, 30 different sites. You can go ahead and require that or turn that off. And then the employment application, maybe consider, right now, this will automatically attach to every job. Maybe consider turning that off. So we're not going to ask for that information up front, but we can gather it later on in the process. The other items we talked about were our candidate fields and our application fields. And those will be prompted for the candidate to complete as they're coming into the system as well. So we'll come back to our setup, we will come to configure, and we have those application fields and candidate fields here. So as we can see, as the candidate was going through the process, they were prompted for name, address, city, state, zip, phone number, email, and all these additional fields that I've added, LinkedIn profile being one of them. You can simply remove those fields if you don't want to prompt for that information, or you can create a new field and gather that information if it's just something you want to have them populate. So maybe you ask, what is your LinkedIn profile? Here's a field for you to populate that. So you could potentially look at cleaning those up a little bit and really just narrowing in on the information that you absolutely need. These are system settings. Every candidate will be prompted to complete that information. We also talked about the employment application itself. So I'm going to come to our library. I'm going to come to questionnaires, And this is where really things are housed that you use time and time again. So questionnaires would be questions for the candidate to complete. Let's go ahead and take a look at that application for employment. So this is our standard application. We've got employment history, references, authorization, personal information. If you need to make any changes or you wish to maybe shorten this up a little bit, remove some questions, please let our support team know via the orange question mark in the upper right and ask a question. And just be sure to let them know specifically what you want to do. So I want to move this question here, I want to delete this question, and they'll be able to help you with that. Instead of the application, maybe you just want to create a short questionnaire just to gather some information that is critical. So I have created a sample questionnaire here. Please provide a link to your LinkedIn profile. Where do you prefer to work? Perhaps with the drop-down option so they can select. When are you available to start? We have a date picker. What is the best way to reach you? So maybe rather than having a long application process, we just have them complete this general information enough to get them into the system. Perhaps you look at their LinkedIn profile, see if you think they're going to be a fit, and then you can take it from there, send the application later on in the process. How do you actually send that application out? Let's go ahead and come to our candidate screen. So let's say we have a candidate that has submitted that basic information. We now want to send that employment application. We can simply email that candidate. We can go ahead and use a template or populate this message box here. Hey, everything looks great. We'd love to proceed. Interview went well. Please fill out this employment application. You can simply send that application for employment and have them complete that. We do have some additional options. You could trigger it on a stage change in a workflow. If you're using texting, that might be an additional option. But for now, just be aware you can get that application out to your candidates to complete later on in the process as you're moving forward. Okay, so that is all the areas that I could think of to go ahead and evaluate, maybe shorten up that application process just to make it easier for your applicants to come into the system. They're on the go, they're on their phone. From what we've been seeing, the shorter the better. And then certainly you can gather that information moving forward just to make sure you have everything that you need and all the pertinent information. So with that, we would like to go ahead and open up the floor for questions. And Ellen will be helping those with those today. So go ahead, if you would, submit those in the questions panel of your GoToWebinar screen. Again, we will do our best to answer those for you.
All right. Thank you, Carol. Great job. I'm just going to add one more thing, and that is that our application and questions are responsive. So it means they'll adjust to the screen size of the candidate, whether that be a phone or desktop or laptop. Makes it easier for the application process to be completed as well.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah. Okay. First question, and first of all, as Carol said, please feel free to submit your questions, and they can be on anything ApplicantStack Recruit and Onboarding. And the first question is, I need to post my jobs on our State Department of Labor site. How can I do that?
Okay, so a couple of options I can think of. Let's go ahead and come back to our county manager job since we're using that as an example. So your first option might be Job Target. Job Target has 25,000 plus sites for you to post to. When you go to post that job, it will make some recommendations for you where it thinks might be a good place. There should also be an option, I believe, to search. So if it's available through Job Target, you could certainly post it there. Additionally, at the very bottom, we have manual posting links. To your source list, you can configure your account and perhaps add that as an option. So I have, as an example, state of California in here. You can include one of these first two URLs, and that will have a unique code at the very end, and that is going to track where your candidate found that job. We can send them either into the job listing page. So maybe you want to just leave it really high level to apply, click here. They'll come into the job listing page and from there into the application. Or we can send them directly to the application. So maybe post your job description to apply, click here, and that will take them directly into the application. So we're just bypassing that step between these two. But be sure to include that link if that site will accept a link. That is how you could post to those sites.
Excellent. And then the beauty of that, Carol, is regardless of where candidates see your job posting, as you mentioned earlier, they'll still come into ApplicantStack to apply, and then you can manage your candidates through your workflow.
Exactly. So everything's being tracked in one place. You're not logging in and out of various sites. It will all be in the same place.
Yep. All right. Next question, Carol. Can you add a short video to your job application? If so, how do you add it?
That would be something I would defer to our technical support team. I believe it has to be hosted online, and then they could provide some further instructions surrounding how to include that information either on your job board or in the job description itself. So I would go ahead, contact our support team. They can help show you how to include that information.
So just coincidentally, I first of all, Carol, you got to thank you on that. I had that question posed of me today. I did confirm with a technical support team member that yes, you can include a short video. That video does need to be posted on a public site like YouTube or Vimeo, um, but you can include the link in your job application, and then candidates will be able to click the link and view the video. And even though it's a public site like YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. This makes sense, but Dan included the fact that you can password protect a YouTube video. So
Okay.
even yeah, so even if you're including a link to a video and you don't want the whole world to see that video on YouTube, for example, you can password protect it. But as Carol said, if you need any assistance in doing so, please go ahead and submit a ticket as well.
Yep. And I am in the job and then the listing and then in the edit view for that. So that is where you would add that information.
Excellent. All right, next question. It's kind of an add-on to the prior one and posting on Department of Labor website. Um, this customer is collecting EEO data, has included the EEO questionnaire as part of their application process, but doesn't know where to be able to see the EEO information.
Okay. Yep. So that would be included under your reports. We do have a couple: EEOC by workflow stage and EEOC summary. So we'll go ahead, we'll just run that. Again, this is a demo account, so not too much information in here. But this will show you, for example, total number of candidates, breakdown by category. You can simply export that information out of the system. That will go into CSV format. But it is not attached by default to the individual candidate's profile. Just to make sure you're compliant, it's always an aggregate form in your reports.
Excellent, thank you. Next question. My candidate didn't move to onboarding. What have I done wrong?
It could be nothing. So let's go to our candidates. Typically, you would go ahead and once they're changed to the hired stage, that should trigger them to come over to onboard. And typically, if they're not pushing, what that means is they are a rehire. And it just means their email address is the same. So we would recommend either modifying on the recruit side, maybe modifying their email address slightly. Same, maybe on the onboard side, modifying that email address. You could add a one or a dash or something of that nature. or you could keep the profile that you already have in onboard and just reassign the forms that you need to have completed. So when I say nothing was wrong, it could just be that the email address is the same, and that's typically what that means. If that's not the case, please let us know, and we can look into that a little bit further.
Great. Next question is, I'm new to onboarding. What onboarding forms do you provide?
Okay, so let's take a quick peek. Let me flip over to onboard, and the way to do that, if you have onboard, you'll see this icon, either grid of boxes or some people call it a waffle. You can move over to onboarding, and let's come. We mentioned the library is where we're housing everything you might use time and time again. We can come to our library and we can see import form. So we can come into the appropriate selection. We've got the state tax forms here for you to use. These are free of charge. They are kept updated. So typically at the end of the year, some states might update their requirements. Those will be kept here. We do have some federal forms. So the federal W-4, we have an I-9 in here as well. We've got the W-9, so you can import those. And then we have the miscellaneous forms. So perhaps a direct deposit authorization or a Paychex direct deposit. Those are the ones pre-built, available for you to use. You can create your own custom forms as well if you need any in addition. So any acknowledgement forms that you have, anything specific to your organization, typically you would create those as custom forms.
All right. Next question, Carol.
Mm-hmm.
We don't post to Indeed directly. Will Indeed Apply be available for my company?
Okay, let me think about that. So we're not, read that again, Ellen, if you don't mind.
Sure. We don't post to Indeed directly. Will
Okay.
Indeed Apply be available for my company?
So
So,
you would have,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Right. Well, I was going to say yes. Um, that Indeed Apply is available to all ApplicantStack customers, and you can specify that Indeed Apply option through where Carol is now, or job boards, Carol. Um, Word of caution with Indeed Apply: candidates do not leave Indeed's site when you have turned on Indeed Apply. So be aware that Indeed does have guidelines that you cannot request personal information such as date of birth, or social security number when Indeed Apply is turned on. But yes, all ApplicantStack accounts can specify that for sure.
Yep, and then you would post to Indeed through ApplicantStack.
Correct. Which is always best practices, that you want to launch your jobs in ApplicantStack to Indeed from ApplicantStack, because again, then your candidates come right into ApplicantStack. They start your application process. You manage all the candidates from within ApplicantStack. So I hope we answered that question. Next question, Carol, is how often do you update government forms? Is there a new live scan form? I recently heard that a new one may be out there.
Okay. Government forms are updated as they come. So as the I-9 is updated, we'll go ahead and update it in the system. State tax forms. What was that term? Live scan?
Live scan, I'm not familiar with that either.
I'm not either. So I'm unsure what that refers to.
If that's a form unique to your organization, you can upload it yourself. It has to be in PDF format in order to upload into the onboarding library. But again, you can upload it yourself, and if you need to make any editing changes, once the form's uploading, you can use ApplicantStack onboarding tools to do so. But I'm not familiar with that term. But we can take a peek at what that form looks like once we close down this webinar. Oh, Oh, well, okay. First of all, we got to thank you for the Indeed Apply information, so it appears like we answered that question. LiveScan is a fingerprinting form for background checks. Um, I don't really know how to answer that question. Um,
It almost sounds like maybe somebody's putting their handprint or their fingerprint on something and it's reading it somehow.
yeah.
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, Pat, we'll take that offline. Um, just as a tangent, we do integrate with a handful of background check companies. Verified First is our preferred partner. I don't know if Verified First could assist you with that process or not, but we'll follow up with you, Pat, offline. Next question, we do need a little clarification. Can you repeat that so I understand? If you are posting on Indeed, you can ask for date, birth, or social security number. I'm going to take this one, Carol, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Um, sure. So, Carol was discussing Indeed apply settings, and you have your choice as to whether or not you want your candidates to apply to your ApplicantStack launch jobs via Indeed apply. The purpose or the goal of Indeed apply is a really quick application process. And again, if a candidate chooses to apply via Indeed apply, Indeed will not allow you to ask personal information during the Indeed apply process. Those are Indeed's rules. So if your application process includes a questionnaire that may include what is your social security number, what is your date of birth, that does not mesh well or at all really with the Indeed apply process. So you can turn off Indeed apply if you want to, um, and that issue will be eliminated. Um, if you choose Indeed Apply, grab some additional information from your candidates, and you can always send them a questionnaire later on after you've vetted them in your recruit process and ask those sorts of personal information questions. So
Yep.
I hope that clarified that question.
Yep. Thank you, Ellen. Another option would be to reword those questions. So instead of date of birth, maybe ask, "Are you over the age of X number?" Or modify that question so you can gather the information you need without asking that information. Indeed, is just looking to protect candidates from identity theft or something of that nature with releasing personal information of that nature.
Yeah. Carol, will you just please show where you turn on or off Indeed Apply
Indeed.
again, please?
Yep, it was under the icon in the upper right, set up to job boards. And then we are going to find Indeed and then come to edit settings. So we can turn it off. We can have mobile only or desktop and mobile.
Great. All right, follow up. Are users notified when new forms are added to ApplicantStack?
I'm pretty sure that in the past we have added it to the announcement section in the upper left. So I would keep an eye if you anticipate changes being made. Keep an eye on this announcement section, and that will be announced when those changes have been happened.
Right. And that announcement section has a lot of good information. Most of you probably registered for this webinar via a link there. But I always plug Allie in our marketing department in the blog she writes. So you can see that under resources on Carol's screen as well. She's got some good information in there. Next question, Carol. How do you remove email notifications to other ApplicantStack users when moving applicants through the stages?
Okay, that is in the workflow. So let's go ahead and come into our setup in the upper right. We're going to come to configure and we will come to our application workflow. So whenever I hear something triggered on a stage change, this is where my mind goes. So let's come in, we can edit that. And then what stage is it that we're talking about? And then we can see who has access to the candidate. And let's go ahead and edit that. We have notifications here as well. So if we don't want them to receive that notification, we can simply uncheck that, and then they won't see those moving forward for that particular stage. So if there's multiple stages, you can remove those. Maybe that user doesn't want to see notifications at all. We can come to their user profile, come into manage users, we can edit, and then we can turn notifications off if we system-wide just don't want anything. We're in there day to day, maybe we're on top of things, we just don't want those email blasts, we can simply turn those off at a system-wide for that user.
Excellent. Carol, can you repeat the steps, please,
Okay.
for notifications in the workflow?
Okay, in the workflow, setup
And this
to.
is, excuse me, Carol, I'm going to interrupt you.
Mhm.
Patty, this is an administrative function, so you have to be an account administrator to do what Carol's doing.
Oh, thank you, Ellen. So
Yeah.
if you don't see that, that's probably why. So thank you, Ellen, for catching me on that. Setup to configure to the application workflow, and then we will come into edit. You may have, depending on your setup, you may have multiple workflows. Right now we just have the default, and then we will come in, and then which stage are we concerned with? We will come edit that workflow stage and uncheck that notification. Be sure to submit that.
All right. Patty, I hope that answered your question. If you've got further questions surrounding that, we got a yes. Good job, Carol. Thank you,
Yay.
Patty. Next question. Can you tell me the difference between basic and premium texting?
Sure. To start, the difference is premium texting has a couple of features that basic texting does not. So let's talk about those. Premium texting allows you to trigger a text in this workflow, again, based on a stage change. It also has the ability to apply via text. So let's come into Accounting Manager. Let's come to the launch screen. You can create a text code word. So you can have a sign or a sandwich board saying to apply to this job, please text this code word to this number. And that's going to get your applicant a link via text to the application. So let's backtrack a little bit. Basic texting allows you to text your candidate. If you see this icon here, that means that's a cell phone. You can either select a template or type into the box your message. You can include a questionnaire. So we talked about maybe sending the application via text. You can do that. You can text multiple candidates at the same time. So that is basic texting, and then premium texting has all that functionality in addition to text to apply and triggering at a stage change. Okay, if you'd like any pricing information, difference between the two, please let your account manager know. We'll be happy to share that with you.
And there are also some excellent Help Center articles on basic texting, and then a great video on the difference between basic and premium texting as well. An add-on question: how do I add texting to my account?
Okay. Thanks for catching me, Ellen. This is an administrator function. So from the homepage, manage billing, and I'm in demo mode, so I don't see that. But there should be an option to add texting. It's going to have a quick blurb about what's included, what the price is, and then you can add it from your billing. We can see here we do have premium texting already, but I believe that's under billing. You should be able, I can't see it right now because I'm in demo mode, but you should be able to add it from your account.
And for those of you participating, if you're from home instead and you're interested in texting, please submit a ticket because your process is a bit different than what Carol just said. All right, I am new to ApplicantStack. How do I add locations and disposition options?
Okay, so we'll take that as a two-part question. So to add locations, we'll come to setup, we will come to configure, and job fields. So I have a location and I have edit options. So right now mine is set up as a drop down. We can simply add an option. Let's go ahead and call that add Pinehole Shores, North Carolina. Let's save that. And here is that option. So now when we go to create a job, let's create a job. Actually, let's skip that step. Let's come into Accounting Manager. Let's go ahead and edit. And now that location is available. Okay, and Ellen, what was the second part of that question? The disposition?
Disposition options. Options.
Right.
Oh my. Options. There we go.
Options.
Yeah.
Let's go to setup and configure, and I believe that's under application fields. Here's that disposition. So just to back it up, configure application fields disposition. We can edit those options. So similar to what we just did, we can reorder those options. You'll just click and drag once they're all in there.
Excellent. And then, Carol, do something for me. Everybody knows I like a tidy account. Do they, on the side, do you have the ability to alphabetize those?
Yes. So we can.
That's just me. That's just one of my purposes. I just like alphabetized options here and locations for that matter.
Yeah. So maybe you want to look at from a chronological standpoint. Maybe for if you're creating stages, interviews going to happen before offer. Maybe you want to look at it from that standpoint. Maybe you want to
Yep,
alphabetize. How does it work for you? It is going to be an account setting. So if you prefer it one way and your colleague prefers it another way, you'll have to work that out and compromise. But you can reorder those to whatever makes sense to your process.
perfect. Next question is, how do I BC several candidates at the same time? So I
Okay.
think this is a mass email, Carol.
Mm-hmm. So let's pick 4 candidates here at random. We can go ahead and email them. You will have the candidates you're emailing listed here. And then there's a quick reminder just to make you feel better about it. This field should contain the recipients you selected. If you selected multiple recipients, they will each receive a separate email addressed just to them. Recipients will not be able to see one another. So that's just a quick little reminder that that's what's going to happen. So you can certainly mass email. They're not going to see one another.
Great, thank you. We got the questions. Oh, I said thank you at the same time. I believe it's pronounced maybe Mamie said thank you, Carol, to you.
Okay, fantastic.
Next question. How do we add weekend availability and start date when a candidate applies?
Okay, so a couple options. You could either include that in the employment application. You could include that in a separate questionnaire, or you could include that in those candidate or application fields, but keep in mind that's going to be prompting everybody to complete that information. What were the fields? I didn't write them down, Ellen. What were the fields?
Weekend availability and
Mm-hmm.
start date.
And start date. Start date should be pretty simple. So if we come to our setup, we come to our configuration just as an option. We can create an application or a candidate. Let's do candidate field. We could create a start date. I may have a hire date in here. I do. I have a hire date. So we could create that and populate that once we know that information. Weekend availability might be a little trickier. It depends on how you want to format that. So is it a simple yes/no question? Is it you want to have a box where they're indicating specific hours on specific days? If it's a little bit more complicated than just a yes/no, I might recommend reaching out to our support team. They may have a template that they could put in your account for you or help you configure that. But if it's a simple yes no, you could simply create that as a yes no question. And then let's go back to our candidate table. Here is that hire date. I could simply select that. We can set our field, set the hire date, populate that. We're starting today, and that should populate that information on the table for us.
I've seen that request in a questionnaire, just to add on
Mm-hmm.
what you said, Carol, is creating a questionnaire saying, can you work Saturday 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.? Can you work Saturday, you know, 5 to 11, that sort of thing? And
Yeah,
yes, so candidates can choose multiple weekend days and times.
sure. And I'm wondering, if we don't have something created that we could simply pull over. So maybe check with support on that.
Yep, sure. All right, next question. When I go to the library and try to add a new form of template, it does not show when I want to send that particular template in an email. Carol, I'm interpreting this question as uploading a customer unique form to onboarding,
Onboarding, okay.
but maybe not having any designated fields for a hire or applicant stack user to complete.
Okay. So let's come to our library. Let's come to modify. So you can add your own custom form. As Ellen mentioned earlier, it has to be a PDF. And then let's go ahead and show you what will happen. So you can simply indicate what kind of form is that. Is it only the hire is completing information, only the employer is completing information? Higher than employer might be your I-9. The hire completes their section, then the employer comes in and verifies, and then we have the reverse scenario. So fields should populate in blue if they need to be completed. You can pull items over simply clicking and dragging that need to be completed if for some reason they did not populate. So if we need a date, if we need a drop down, multiple choice will give us some bullets. Um, and then Ellen, the question was how to assign that?
Yeah, so it's not showing up the ability to assign it to a hire, again, is how I'm interpreting this.
Okay,
And because I can look at the question, I'm just going to jump in. If the form is a employer only designated form, you want to show that field again, please, Carol?
sure.
It's
I'm going to
it's not going to show in an email to a hire. So I don't know if we've answered your question. If we haven't, please go ahead and submit a ticket, and we'll be able to dive into it a little bit more.
Yeah, I would say maybe take a peek at how that form type is set. And then it should be available when we come back to our hire screen. Let's come to John. We should be able to add a form, and then all of your options should appear here. So if it's not, that might be a good place to start. Maybe it's not set up to accommodate the hire completing that. But if it's in your library, it should appear here. So we may need to look into that a little bit further.
Thank you. I think you got to make sense on that, Carol. So hopefully we answered
Okay.
that question. Again, please do not be shy to submit a technical support ticket. And just to clarify our ticketing process, even if you want to ask Carol or myself a question, the best means of doing so is through our ticketing system, and then the ticket will be assigned to either Carol or myself. If it's more technically oriented, one of our technical support team members will research your issue, and then respond directly to you. And the reason why we ask you to submit a ticket first is if I try to answer a more technically oriented ticket and I'm at a loss, I can then assign that to a technical support member who can then take over. So our ticketing system allows many, many people to help our customers as opposed to just emailing your account manager. So it's just a little bit more efficient for all of us to give you a response quickly to your question.
Right, right. And also, all the background will be provided in one place. And
Yeah.
that's really going to help us research your issue and figure out what's going on.
And Carol, I think questions are slowing down, but do you mind showing how to access technical support, please?
Absolutely not. So, in the upper right, the question mark, ask a question. That's going to bring you to the applicant stack, tech support, and account management screen. You'll just need to populate some, or I don't want to say general information, basic information, name, email, where can we reach you, what is the name or the domain of your account. That's going to help us determine which account we're talking about. Priority category, subject, description. Please provide as much information as possible. Screenshots if you have them. Um, that's really going to help us narrow in on what's happening. So if we just get a ticket, my manager can't see candidates. It's really helpful to know who's the manager, what candidates can they not see, what job is it specifically, and that's going to help us narrow in on what's happening. Otherwise, we're going to have to write back and get some clarifying questions answered, and it may slow things down. So as much as you can provide up front, that's super helpful to us in researching that.
Great. And once again, I'm staring at my screen, seeing if another question is going to come up.
Cheers.
So I think it's ready. You're ready to close down for the afternoon, Carol.
Okay, fantastic. So thanks again, everyone, for joining today. Back on that announcements panel on your ApplicantStack homepage, we've got upcoming webinars that we mentioned. We would love to see you. So thanks again for attending, and we will see you in the future. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Great job, Carol. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.